Big 12 basketball. UCF and West Virginia meet for the season finale. What's on the line for both coaches in that one?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Joining me is my good friend, Mountaineer Paul from Locked On West Virginia. Paul, we don't get together enough, Paul.
I know, man. I know it's a thing. We need to absolutely do that. And we are getting together for this UCF West Virginia crossover. I think this is going to be an important game, last game of the year. Both teams could have. There's a couple things going on here. I think both teams are. Is UCF at 6 conference wins? Where are they at?
No, they're 5 right now.
5. So they got to win out, but they could still play for that first round bye in the Big 12 tournament, as well as a possible long shot tournament bid.
Yeah, the long shot tournament bid is an interesting concept to me, right? Can you go on a run in the Big 12 tournament? But before you get there, you got to get through the regular season. UCF ends the season with West Virginia. Look, you guys replaced Bob Huggins a couple years ago, and yeah, before we started recording, you were telling me about how well you feel like that's going. On the opposite side, Johnny Dawkins, head basketball coach at UCF, is under the gun, right? Lots of close but no cigar games for UCF, almost beating Kansas, coming close versus Houston, and then losing games that they should not lose. But ending the season on a high note is so important. Talk to me about West Virginia and how this season is going and how they're maybe looking at this season finale versus UCF as a way to put, a cherry on top of the season.
Well, even though West Virginia has really had a bad 8 or 9 game stretch here, Joel and Artie, most bracket experts have us in the dance because of that first 17, 18 games where West Virginia just absolutely crushed it. Beating Kansas, beating Gonzaga, beating Arizona, beating Iowa State, just so many great wins. And Darren Devries, the catalyst behind that, his son, obviously, we knew he had off-season shoulder surgery before the season began, and privately, I knew that he had kind of rushed that back. I had Tucker on my show before the season began. And so, kind of knew a little bit about the situation, got to know his uncles and different people through some different things. And you know what? It was a tough situation. And unfortunately we lost Tucker and Javon Small. Then he took over, and has either been number 1 or number 2 in the league in scoring, top 5 in assists. He's really led this team. And because he's going to be a first team All-American, a lot of people think. So, he's really been the catalyst, and Darren Devries has used him in a way that he just wasn't used by Boykins at Oklahoma State. No offense to him. It's just the way that Darren Devries coaches offense. He's an X's and O's guy, and he fits our mentality. So, even though we've had a rough stretch over the last 8, 9, 10 games or whatever it is, Darren Devries fits us, and we love him. There's all type of rumors about where he may go already, but we feel like we're going to try to do everything we can to keep him.
Yeah, on the other side, UCF fans are not on board with the direction that Johnny Dawkins has this team headed in the wins and loss column. So when you go up against a team like West Virginia, it could be an opportunity to get one of those wins, Paul, that have just escaped them so far this year. Only 5 conference wins, 5-11 in conference, I believe, so far this season. Just really, really tough to swallow. And the Big 12, we know, is a tough basketball conference. So at the top of the conference, you'll have a few teams in that tournament. Obviously, West Virginia looking for a bid. I think the only way that UCF finds their way into the conference, into the NCAA tournament, is if they win the whole thing. And I'm not sure I see that happening at this point. But if they can get the win versus West Virginia, What's the ripple effect of this? Do you see headed? What would a loss do to West Virginia headed into the Big 12 tournament?
I think it depends on how the because the day we're recording this, how a couple games go that haven't quite played out yet. And I think, assuming West Virginia does what I think they're going to do, which is I think they're going to beat TCU tonight, which is the day we're recording this. I think they lose on the road to BYU because of how hot they are. And then that game at Utah just became a lot more interesting. Imagine, how about Josh Eilert getting back-to-back interim jobs? West Virginia gets fired, obviously. That's now that DeVries has come in. He goes to Utah, probably not expecting to get an interim head coaching job again right away. So that makes that game in 2 weeks very weird and interesting for West Virginia fans against Utah with Eilert on the sidelines just a year after he coached us. We get to UCF. And I don't think you overlook Johnny Dawkins and crew because he's been there since 2016. He stewarded this program into the Big 12, done well by them in a lot of ways, although not playing up to par now. It's going to be interesting. I think the ripple effect of a loss there could be major if we lose any one of those games that I think we shouldn't, because now they have us in our last 4 bye. Any of those losses could knock us out, and we would need to put in work in the tournament.
Are you worried about West Virginia scoring in this one? As of today, UCF is the 5th best scoring team in the conference. Again, not reflected in their record at 78.9 points per game. And if you're West Virginia, you're averaging 68.5 points per game. So, that's 11-point gap. Is that something that, West Virginia fans need to keep an eye on? We know UCF can put up points when they get hot.
Yeah, I mean, sure, they could. I think West Virginia, when you look at it, they're top 20 in almost every category on defense. They play elite defense, especially from the, contesting the 3. They got one of the best on-ball defenders in the country in Sincere Harris. But, sir, could UCF absolutely put up some points in that game? West Virginia tries to make things a rock fight. That's not really how Darren Devries wants to play, but it's how they have to play this year because teams have figured out how to guard Javon Small, right? You have so much data now this late into the season. Like, as you know, the analytics, the publications like Vegas, different things are way more accurate at this time of the year than any other time of the year. And so there's so much more data for the fan and for the coaches as to how to prepare for teams. And the data right now says you double Javon Small off the ball screen and then let everybody else figure everything else out. Because for the first 17 games, Javon was able to get in the lane off that ball screen and West Virginia was just cleaning up. So, yeah, there is a lot going on there. It's going to be interesting to see how UCF plays it and if they have anybody that can guard Javon one-on-one because, unfortunately, we've had to run against some really good defenses here the last few games.
Yeah. Look, lots to watch in this one, Paul. How important is it for each team to get that season finale win? I'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love my parlays. I don't know about you. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com and join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Paul, ending the season on the high note sounds like a cliche, but if you're UCF or West Virginia, middle to low part of the Big 12 right now in basketball, it could be very important to end the season on a high note. Now, your coach is not in the same position that Johnny Dawkins is in, where I feel like, hey, man, he's got to find wins somewhere. But, what do you see? What do you see over this last stretch for West Virginia versus UCF? You got 4 games left. Is it 4-0? for the Mountaineers?
I think, I think 4-0 is in the cards. West Virginia has, you look at what West Virginia has been able to do this year. I've mentioned it a few different times, the teams they've been able to beat. So they have it in them to beat any of these last 4 teams. Absolutely. On the road at BYU, you can make the case BYU's playing as good as anybody right now. So that's the one game I look at on the schedule and say I don't know about. You get TCU at home, who can be sneaky at times. You get Utah, who just fired their coach on the 4th, and then UCF on the 8th coming back to West Virginia. So the way I've looked at it is you have to hold serve at home. That's just the way it is. You get to 18 wins with one of the best resumes in the country. Most people have a solidly in. Winning the last game, if you're going to lose a couple down the stretch, it's better to have that sandwich, in my opinion. You win this tonight, and then you beat UCF to end the season. And if you lose to the Utah trip, okay, so be it. You get to 18 wins, but you have to serve. You have to get home field or home court advantage. You have to do that. So I think that's going to be what's most important. 4-0 is in the cards, though, in my opinion.
Does UCF have a chance to play spoiler here in your book? Like, does a loss to UCF significantly hurt West Virginia's, tournament chances in your opinion? Again, you've got 2 on the road and 2 at home, but your road games are sandwiched between those 2 home games to end the season. So you get it at home in front of your crowd. Right now, it is a sneaky game. And I agree with you. You can't overlook Johnny Dawkins and UCF. They have given some of the best teams in the country an absolute run for their money. In my opinion, depth is the issue. Depth is the issue for UCF, and I think that's where West Virginia has a chance to take advantage of them down the stretch.
Well, it would have been if we also have some depth issues right now because we're playing 7 guys, unfortunately. So it's been a rough season for us on the depth side. Obviously, losing Tucker DeVries was just a big thing for us. Hurt us really bad. But we also have some guys that just aren't ready to play right now. We've redshirted a guy. And so right now, West Virginia's running about 7 guys. So, a lot of teams try to impact us with their depth. So actually, we may be evenly matched in that category. So maybe UCF could make that an advantage for them even in this one.
Yeah. I think that for UCF, points from the bench have been scarce. They've been really scarce. It's improved as of late with how Johnny Dawkins has shaken up some of the lineups, but it's been a problem finding scoring outside of your starting 5. And so at the ends of games, if you got just a little bit more from your bench, that's how teams are beating UCF right now on the hardwood. But you're saying, hey, look, we're thin too. 7 guys, there's not a ton to look at there. I think this is going to be a pretty fascinating matchup, which is why I wanted to highlight this one. When you look at the Big 12 standings, though, and you look at where West Virginia is, firmly in the middle of the standings, if you clean your last 4 games, right, you're looking at an 11-9 conference record. I think above 500 would be fantastic for West Virginia. If you're UCF, your best case scenario is 9-11. So you've got to win out to finish right below 500. And I think that UCF needs this more than West Virginia does, honestly, because if you're going to hold on to your coach, you're going to have to win all, if not most, of these last 4 games.
Some fans may be just saying, get it over with. I know when we were in that situation with Eilert, we won 9 games last year. There were people at the end saying, we may as well just lose out. Let's make this as bad as possible so he doesn't come back. That's the ugly side of it that we don't want to, sometimes acknowledge about fans. But thankfully, cooler heads usually prevail. If Johnny Dawkins wins these last 3 or 4 games, he's probably going to be back. Is that the sentiment you get?
Yeah, I think that I think the issues are clear. And I think that there's a chance that he gets 1 more year to see if he can fix it. In the era of the portal and NIL, you can flip a roster quickly. And with the changes that are coming to NIL, Paul, with maybe the schools taking over the management of that more directly, you have a decision to make. If you're managing the money around paying athletes, you say to yourself, okay, you know what? We're going to give you one more year and we're going to give you X amount of dollars to go to the portal and try to find some depth. And if you can, and see what see where it lands.
He's going to have to pry some of that away from Scott Frost.
Look, and Frost is building a lot of momentum in NIL right now. There's a lot of enthusiasm around his hire and what he can
Same
do.
with us. We could do a crossover just on that. The two coaches that return back to the old days with Rich Rod and Scott Frost.
Absolutely, absolutely. But look, at the end of the day, you got to win. This game may be the tale of two different coaches in two very different positions. We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Guys, Prize Picks is my favorite place to go and place bets when I want to bet on the action. So Prize Picks is running a lot of specials. March basketball is here, and there's no better place to get on the action than with our friends at Prize Picks. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on two player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 extra cash. It's fast, it's easy, and keeps every game exciting. Build lineups, do it quick and easy. You get fast payouts, and they have something called Taco Tuesdays. Prize Picks even offers things like this where you get discounted player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first lineup. What does this game mean to these two coaches? We've talked about the hot seat that Johnny Dawkins is on right now. And trust me, it's hot. Results have been waning. But on the flip side, you've talked about the momentum that you guys have building there, with your guy replacing Bob Huggins and getting big wins in these first couple of years for West Virginia. I think that continues versus UCF, despite some signs pointing to UCF being a trouble for West Virginia in that game.
Yeah, I agree. I think West Virginia is in a much better place. They've got better players. Javon Small, you can make a case is, right there in the top 2 or 3 best players in the conference. That continues to be the case. Even though he plays 35, 38 minutes a game, they need him to do that. It's clear, especially when West Virginia gets secondary help, and they do have players that can do that. It's just been, West Virginia has lost so many games by less than 5 points this year, and I think depth has been a problem at times, but I don't know if UCF qualifies in the same league as like the Baylors or the Texas Techs or the BYUs that have beaten us close here lately, than more so than the Cincinnatis and teams like that we've kind of beat up on here lately.
Yeah, you lost to Baylor by 3 points
in overtime, and then they scored 9 points in overtime, all at the free throw line.
Wow.
Sorry.
4-point loss to BYU. There have been some close ones, certainly here. If you're West Virginia, on the flip side, UCF, I can't stress enough. You lost by 1 point to Houston, who is vying for a 1 seed right now. You lost by 4 points to Kansas in a game that you probably should have won. They've had some opportunities to log some big quad ones and just have not been able to do it. I think due to depth issues. It's hard to tell where the administration's head is at, where Terry Mohajir's head is at about Johnny Dawkins. But a loss to West Virginia, I think, could spell the end for Johnny Dawkins. He's got because and the reason I say that is because although I think beating West Virginia would be a solid win, right? Now it's not a gimme. I think it's a game. It's one of those games that you got to show that you can win with the guys that you have, and to some extent, I may be thinking with the changes in NIL coming, is this the coach that I want to give more resources, right? Is this just a personnel issue, or did this coach create the personnel issues that we see? And games like West Virginia kind of tell you a little bit more than the outliers versus the teams that are clearly more talented than you, if that makes sense, right? So the teams are a little bit more matched evenly, right? Where it comes down to, the personnel is not the issue, it's the coaching I think that tells you more, Paul, about whether you have the right guy at the helm or not.
Darren Devries will expose that, man. He's one of the, if not the best I've ever seen. And I know that sounds crazy to say in year one, but that's been proven game after game this year. He's outcoached so many legends, and it's been obvious because of the way he's just so good at drawing up plays on the sideline. He's good from his out of bounds plays specifically are elite. He constantly gets teams in weird spots from out of bounds. He's really good at end of game and end of half situations, and just generally, a game plan for a team. It's what made him good at a place like Drake that had the least resources in the I guess you consider them mid majors. They had the least resources. He went to 4 straight tournaments, 4 straight 20 or plus or more wins, 2-time coach of the year in the Missouri Valley Conference, and steps into the Big 12. And some people have put him in the conversation for coach of the year in Big 12 up until the last few games, because we've lost a couple too many games for him to get that now. But there was a time when that was being talked about heavily based on just how many challenges we've had from a roster standpoint, because we've had 7 guys literally since the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Look, you've got to have depth. You got to have depth in today's college basketball. We're seeing what teams like Auburn, who was vying for the number 1 overall seed, are doing with depth, right? They've got the National Player of the Year in Janai Broome, in my opinion, but it's their depth, I think, that's wearing teams down game after game after game. When someone has a bad game, Janai can't carry you that night, you're seeing guys for the bench step up and contribute 15, 20, 25 points there to help you. And I think that's where UCF and West Virginia ultimately want to be in terms of depth to compete, with the Kansases and the Houstons of the conference. So we'll see how it goes. But look, fascinating stuff. I can't wait to talk to you after the game, after the season's over, and once that Big 12 tournament starts. Paul, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, Locked On West Virginia, at Paul Mountaineer on X. I have my opinions on both those places. Love talking West Virginia, Big 12 stuff. Appreciate you having me on, Mike.
Guys, thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your second listen, go check out our friends at Locked On Big 12. Our guy Drake Told leads the conversation in conference realignment news and pulls no punches when it comes to talking about every team in the Big 12, including the UCF Knights and the West Virginia Mountaineers. You can find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.